Chapter 6, I Become Supreme Lord of the Bathroom. So my Latin teacher was a horse, a centaur to be exact. The world had officially stopped making sense. I just stood there on the porch of the big house, my brain doing gymnastics trying to process it all. Chiron, the person I knew as Mr. Brunner, smiled patiently, as if he was used to kids' brains short-circuiting in his presence. He explained that he'd been a trainer of heroes for thousands of years. Heracles, Achilles, Jason, you name a famous Greek hero, and Chiron probably taught them how to not get killed on their first quest. My head was spinning. Mr. D, the grumpy god in the Hawaiian shirt, just looked bored and told Chiron to get on with it, complaining that my presence was messing up his pinochle game. Chiron decided it was best if Annabeth gave me the full tour. She looked less than thrilled, but she agreed, grabbing my arm and pulling me off the porch. "Come on, new kid," she said. As we walked, she was like an interrogator. "So you killed the Minotaur?" "Yeah," I said. "I think so." "You can't just think you killed something like that, Percy. It's a yes or no question." We walked past the volleyball court, where a bunch of satyrs like Grover were playing. They bleated at Annabeth and stared at me. We passed the strawberry fields I'd smelled from my sick room window. Annabeth explained that the camp's cover was a strawberry farm. The money we made selling them to New York restaurants paid for, well, everything. And the strawberries were the main ingredient for nectar and ambrosia. Then she showed me the cabins. They were arranged in a U shape around a central lawn with a huge fire pit. There were 12 of them, each one representing one of the Olympian gods. They were all completely different. The one for Ares was painted a garish, angry red with barbed wire on the roof. The Athena cabin, Annabeth's cabin, was gray and serious, with a carved owl over the door. "Your cabin depends on who your parent is," she explained. "And if you don't know who your parent is?" I asked. She gave me a long, hard look. "Then you go to cabin 11, Hermes." She told me about the big three, Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades, the most powerful gods. She said that after a terrible war between their children generations ago, they took an oath not to have any more kids. It was a pact to prevent more destruction. I got the feeling this was important. We ended up at cabin 11. It looked like a normal, old-school summer camp cabin, but it was packed to the rafters. The place was overflowing with kids of all ages. A guy who looked about college age came out to greet us. He was tall, handsome, with sandy hair and a friendly smile. He had a long, thin scar running down his face, but it didn't make him look scary. It made him look like he had a story. "Annabeth," he said, "got a new one." "Luke, this is Percy Jackson," she announced. "He's undetermined." Luke smiled at me, a genuine, welcoming smile that made me feel instantly at ease. "Welcome, Percy. I'm Luke, counselor for the Hermes cabin. We take in all newcomers, all the travelers. Anyone who doesn't have a place to go, you've got one here until you're claimed." He showed me to a crowded corner of the floor where I could unroll a sleeping bag. For the first time, I didn't feel like a complete freak. I just felt like another lost kid. But that feeling didn't last long. After I dropped my stuff, which was just the Minotaur horn, Annabeth was about to show me the dining pavilion when a group of kids blocked our path. They were big, mean-looking, and they smelled like old gym socks. In the lead was a girl who was even bigger and tougher than the boys. She had stringy brown hair and a permanent sneer plastered on her face. "Well, well," the girl sneered. "A new punk." "Clarice," Annabeth sighed like this was a daily annoyance. "Why don't you go polish your spear or something?" "We were just about to give the new kid his welcoming tour," Clarice said, cracking her knuckles. "Right to the toilets." Her friends laughed. Annabeth tried to step in, but they shoved her aside. Clarice grabbed me by the neck of my t-shirt. "Gonna give you a swirly, punk. Welcome to Camp Half-Blood." She started dragging me towards the bathroom block. I struggled, but she was impossibly strong. Her friends pinned my arms, laughing as they pushed open the door to a grimy bathroom. The place smelled like mildew and the fluorescent lights hummed. Clarice shoved my head down towards one of the toilets. "Say hello to the porcelain god for me." I was helpless. I was about to get my head dunked in toilet water by a bunch of bullies. I felt a surge of despair, and then something else. The same feeling I'd had at the museum fountain with Nancy Bobofet, a tug in the pit of my stomach, a roar in my ears. The plumbing started to shake. The pipes groaned like a dying whale. Clarice hesitated, looking around. What's his deal? Then it happened. With a sound like a cannon firing, the toilet next to me exploded. A jet of toilet water shot out, hitting Clarice right in the face. Then the next toilet erupted, and the next, and the next. 6 geysers of water blasted her and her friends, slamming them against the wall and washing them straight out the bathroom door. When the water shut off, it was quiet. Clarice and her gang were sprawled on the muddy ground outside, soaked and sputtering. But me, I was standing in the middle of the flooded bathroom, and I was completely, 100% bone dry. I hadn't even been splashed. I walked out feeling dizzy. Annabeth was standing there staring at me with an expression of pure shock. Her stormy gray eyes were wide with a dawning realization. "How did you—" she started, then stopped. She looked from me to the drenched bullies and back to me. A slow smile spread across her face. "I want you on my team for Capture the Flag," she said. Chapter 7. My dinner goes up in smoke. The next few days were a blur of trying to fit in at a summer camp for mythological misfits. I was still officially undetermined, which meant I was a permanent guest in the Hermes cabin, a crowded, noisy, and surprisingly friendly place. Luke was a great counselor, but I was still the new kid who had blown up a bathroom. My reputation preceded me. Every activity I tried was a spectacular failure. Archery? My arrow ended up in another camper's shirt. Foot racing? The wood nymphs left me in the dust, literally turning into trees when they got tired of waiting for me. And wrestling? Let's just say Clarice from the Aries cabin made it very clear that our little bathroom encounter was not forgotten. The only thing I was even remotely good at was canoeing, which felt strangely natural. That night at dinner, the weirdness continued. We all sat at our cabin tables in the open-air dining pavilion. I was at the Hermes table, crammed in with dozens of other kids. In the center of the pavilion was a huge bronze brazier, flames crackling toward the sky. Kieran stood and raised his glass. "To the gods," he said. Everyone else raised their glasses and repeated, "To the gods." My goblet was empty. Luke leaned over and said, "Just tell it what you want, Percy." Non-alcoholic, of course. I thought, a blue cherry Coke. And just like that, the glass filled with fizzy, bright blue liquid. It was a small thing, but it felt like magic. After we got our food, a pretty normal barbecue spread, Luke told me we had to make an offering. One by one, campers from each table would walk up to the bronze brazier and scrape a portion of their meal into the fire. "It's a sacrifice," he explained. "The gods like the smell." "You're kidding," I said. He just shook his head. When it was my turn, I walked up to the fire, my plate of brisket feeling heavy in my hands. The smoke didn't smell like burning food. It smelled like every good thing I could imagine. Hot chocolate, fresh baked bread, a summer barbecue. I scraped off the best slice of brisket and let it fall into the flames. I talked to my dad for the first time in my life. "Whoever you are," I thought, directing my words into the smoke, "let me know. Please, send me a sign." The smoke coiled into the shape of a flower, then vanished. I felt a pang of loneliness so sharp it almost buckled my knees. I thought of my mom and wondered if she was in the underworld, and if the gods I was sacrificing my dinner to were the same ones who ruled that place. After dinner, Mr. D made some announcements, mostly complaining about a volleyball net and mispronouncing my name as Perry Johnson again. Then Chiron announced that the Council of Cloven Elders had reviewed Grover's performance. My heart sank. I thought he was going to get in trouble because of me, but Chiron smiled. "Grover Underwood," he announced, "has been granted his official searcher's license." The whole pavilion erupted in applause. Grover, who was sitting with a few other satyrs, looked like he was going to faint from happiness. I caught up with him later by the campfire. "A searcher's license," I said. "That's great, man." "It's my life's dream, Percy," he said, his eyes shining. He explained that for thousands of years, satyrs had been searching for the great god of the wild Pan. The story said Pan had disappeared, but the satyrs believed he was just sleeping. and that a chosen searcher would one day find him and bring the world back to a wilder, better age. But the search is dangerous, he added, his tone becoming serious. No one who has gone out in the last 2,000 years has ever come back. My dad, my uncle, they never returned. He looked out at the dark woods, and I realized how brave my goofy, nervous friend really was. Later that night, I was sitting on the steps of the Hermes cabin, feeling more alone than ever. Luke came and sat next to me. "Tough first day," he asked. I shrugged. "I don't belong here. I don't even know who my dad is." Luke stared up at the stars. "The gods are busy, Percy. They have a lot of kids, and they don't always pay attention. Sometimes they don't claim you. It's not your fault." He looked down at the scar on his face, and a shadow of bitterness crossed his features. "My dad is Hermes, big-time messenger god. You'd think he'd at least send a text message once in a while. But no, I'm just another kid he left behind." His words hung in the air. It was the first time I'd heard anyone here say something that wasn't full of praise for the gods. "What about Annabeth?" I asked, changing the subject. "What's her deal?" Luke's expression softened. "Annabeth's been here since she was 7, Percy. She's had a rough life. She's desperate to prove herself, to go on a real quest. That's why she's so interested in you. A new, powerful half-blood. She thinks you might be her ticket out of here, her chance for glory." It all clicked into place. The interrogation, the way she watched me. She wasn't just curious. She was strategic. I went to bed that night in my borrowed sleeping bag on the floor of a crowded cabin. I was at the one place in the world I was supposed to belong, and I had never felt more like an outsider. I didn't know who I was or what I was capable of. All I knew was that I was a long, long way from home. In Chapter 7. Chapter 8. We capture a flag. The next few days were a whirlwind of camp activities, but everything was leading up to Friday night. Friday was Capture the Flag night. It wasn't just a game here. It was a full-on war simulation. The camp divided into 2 teams, and the bragging rights were legendary. This time, it was Athena Cabin leading the blue team, which meant we were allied with Apollo and Hermes. On the red team was Ares Cabin, allied with pretty much everyone else. Annabeth, as captain of the blue team, was in her element. She walked around with a blueprint of the woods, directing strategy like a general before a battle. She pulled me aside as we were getting our armor on. She handed me a shield and a helmet with a blue horsehair plume. "You're on border patrol," she said, pointing to a spot on her map near a creek that divided the 2 territories. "You're putting me on the sideline?" I asked, a little disappointed. "I thought you wanted me on your team." "What you do is critical," she said, her gray eyes intense. "Stay by the creek. Don't let anyone past you. Just hold them there." Before I could argue, she said, "Oh, and here." She handed me something. It was a New York Yankees baseball cap. "My magic invisibility cap," she explained. "I won't be needing it if my plan works." And with that, she vanished. So there I stood, by myself, next to a little creek in the middle of the woods, feeling like a glorified security guard. The conch horn blew, signaling the start of the game. I could hear yelling and the clash of metal in the distance, but my patch of woods was quiet, too quiet. Then I heard them. A group of campers crashing through the undergrowth, heading right for me. It was Clarice from the Ares cabin, and she had 5 of her biggest, ugliest siblings with her. She was holding a 5-foot-long spear that crackled with electricity. It was a gift from her dad. "There he is," she snarled. "The punk who made me look like a fool. We're going to pulverize him." I drew my sword. My hands were sweating, 6 against 1. This was not going to be pretty. They came at me all at once. I tried to remember the lessons Chiron had given me, but my movements were clumsy. I was a novice. They were trained warriors. Clarice's spear jabbed at me, and a jolt of electricity shot up my arm, making my teeth rattle. One of her brothers slashed my arm, and a searing pain made me cry out. I stumbled backward, right into the creek. I thought I was done for. But the second the water touched my skin, something happened. The exhaustion, the pain in my arm, It all just washed away. The water seemed to surge around me, and a feeling of power flooded my veins. My mind cleared. I could see every move they were about to make. When Clarice lunged with her spear again, I didn't just block it. I caught the shaft, redirected the point into the dirt, and snapped it over my knee. The magic weapon, a gift from a god, splintered into useless pieces. Her siblings charged, but it was like they were moving in slow motion. I parried, sidestepped, and disarmed them one by one, my sword a blur. I wasn't just defending myself anymore. I was fighting, and I was winning. Just as I knocked the last of them into the creek, I heard whooping and cheering from the woods behind me. Luke came running into the clearing, holding a red-plumed helmet and banner, the Ares flag. Annabeth appeared right next to me, taking off her invisibility cap. She'd set the whole thing up. Clarice was just a diversion, so Luke could sneak in and grab the flag. The blue team had won. Campers poured out of the woods, lifting Luke and me onto their shoulders. It was the first time I felt like I truly belonged. The celebration was cut short by a howl, a deep, guttural sound that didn't belong to any animal I'd ever heard. It came from the rocks above us, and a creature leaped down into our midst. It was a dog the size of a rhinoceros with eyes like pools of lava and teeth like daggers. "A hellhound!" someone screamed. "From the fields of punishment!" Panic erupted. Campers scattered. The monster wasn't supposed to be here. The camp's magical borders were supposed to keep things like this out. But it was here, and its burning eyes were locked on me. It lunged. I was too slow, too stunned to move. It slammed into me, its claws tearing through my armor and into my chest. I felt a searing pain, and then the beast was gone, a dozen arrows sprouting from its neck as it dissolved into a cloud of black dust. Chiron stood where it had been, his bow still raised. I was bleeding badly. Annabeth yelled, "Percy, the water, get in the water." I stumbled back into the creek, and just like before, the water began to heal me. The deep gashes on my chest started to close. As I stood there dazed, a light began to glow above me, a green holographic light swirling and spinning in the air. It solidified into a single image, floating right over my head. A trident, the three-pointed spear of the sea god. The clearing went completely silent. Every camper, every satyr, every nymph stared at the glowing green symbol above me. Then, one by one, they knelt. Luke, Clarice, all my cabin mates. Annabeth was the first to find her voice. "It's determined," she whispered in awe. Kieran's voice boomed across the clearing, his face grim. "Your father," he said, his voice full of a new, terrible respect. "This is not a matter to be taken lightly. This is a sign from the god of the seas." He looked right at me, and I felt the weight of every eye in the camp. "Hail, Percy Jackson," he announced, his voice echoing in the sudden silence. "Son of the Earthshaker, son of the Stormbringer, son of the father of horses. Hail, son of Poseidon." Chapter 9, I am offered a quest. The rest of the night was a blur. Being the son of Poseidon wasn't the party I might have imagined. It meant I was a mistake, a broken oath, a living, breathing reason for the gods to go to war. I was moved out of the crowded, noisy Hermes cabin and into cabin 3, the Poseidon cabin. It was long and low, made of rough sea stone with seashells embedded in the walls. The inside smelled like the ocean. There were 6 empty bunk beds, their sheets still in plastic. I was the only person who had slept here in decades. I was completely, utterly alone. I stared out the window at the stormy sea, feeling like the loneliest kid on the planet, and for the first time, I think I prayed to my father, but the sea didn't answer. The next morning, the camp was in an uproar. The weather had turned, a storm was lashing the coast, and the other campers were all whispering and staring at me. They didn't see me as Percy Jackson anymore. They saw me as the son of a god who was about to start World War III. Chiron summoned me to the big house. I found him and Mr. D playing their usual game of pinochle, but the mood was anything but playful. Grover was there, looking nervous, and a man I'd never seen before, a ghostly pale figure in a pinstripe suit. "Percy," Chiron said, his face grave, "we have a problem, a very serious one." He told me the story. 10 days ago, on the winter solstice, Zeus's master lightning bolt was stolen right from his throne room on Mount Olympus. The master bolt is the symbol of his power, the blueprint from which all other lightning bolts are forged. Its theft is an unimaginable insult. Zeus, in his infinite paranoia, immediately blamed his brother, Poseidon. He believes Poseidon had a human hero, me, steal the bolt for him. My jaw dropped. That's insane. I just found out I was a half-blood a few days ago. Zeus is not known for his reason, Chiron said grimly. He has given Poseidon a deadline, the summer solstice. That's in 10 days. If the bolt is not returned by then, there will be war. A war between the gods that will make mortal wars look like a water balloon fight. Mr. D, for the first time, looked completely serious. And you, brat, will be the first to be turned into a smoking pile of ashes. Chiron explained that since he believes I'm the thief, Zeus won't let me just fly the bolt back up to Olympus. It has to be brought by a hero on a formal quest, a quest to find the real thief. And who's that? I asked. We believe it is Hades, Lord of the Dead, Chiron said. He has always been the outcast, resentful of his brothers. A war between Zeus and Poseidon would leave him the most powerful of the three. So that was it, my first quest. To go to the underworld, confront the god of the dead, take back the most powerful weapon in the universe, and return it to Zeus before he blows up the world. No pressure. But to be granted a quest, Chiron continued, you must receive a prophecy. I have already consulted the oracle. He looked up towards the attic of the big house, where the spirit of Delphi was housed in the body of a mummy. He recited the words the oracle had told him, and each line felt like a stone dropping into my gut. He said, you shall go west and face the god who has turned. First, you shall find what was stolen and see it safely returned. Dusra, you shall be betrayed by one who calls you a friend. Mundram, and you shall fail to save what matters most in the fourth. I just stood there, the words echoing in the room. Betrayed? Fail to save what matters most? This didn't sound like a quest. It sounded like a tragedy. But I didn't have a choice. The world was at stake. I accepted the quest. I was allowed 2 companions. My first choice was easy. Grover. He'd been my protector all year, and he insisted on coming. For my second companion, Annabeth stepped forward. She had been listening from the porch the whole time. I'm coming with you, she said, her gray eyes blazing with intensity. You need me, Percy. You're strong, but you're no strategist. You'll die without me. She was right. I needed her help. So our questing party was formed. Luke and Chiron came to see us off. Luke gave me a gift from his father, Hermes, a pair of basketball high tops. Maya, he said, and wings sprouted from the heels. They were flying shoes. He smiled, but his eyes were sad. Gods are always giving out gifts like this, he said. Be careful, Percy. There's no glory in quests. Not anymore. Then Chiron gave me his own gift. It was the ballpoint pen he'd thrown to me in the museum. Its name is Anaklusmos, he said. Riptide. It was a gift to me from your father. It cannot harm mortals, only monsters. But it is a hero's weapon. I trust you will use it well. We stood at the top of Half-Blood Hill, the 3 of us. Me, Annabeth, and Grover. Our ride was waiting. It was Argus, the head of security, a blonde surfer dude in a van. The only weird thing about him was that he had eyes all over his body, on his hands, his face, his neck. He never missed a thing. He drove us into the mortal world, leaving the safety of the camp behind. We were on our own now, 3 kids against the forces of myth, on a quest to stop a war between the gods, with a prophecy hanging over our heads that promised betrayal and failure. And we had 10 days to do it. End of chapter 9. Thank you for listening. Please consider subscribing and engaging with my posts. Chapter 10. I ruin a perfectly good bus. Argus, the man with eyes all over his body, dropped us at the Greyhound station in Midtown Manhattan. He didn't say goodbye. He just grunted, and one of the eyes on the back of his hand winked at me before the van pulled away. We were officially on our own. 3 kids on a cross-country trip to the underworld, with a backpack full of supplies, a few $100s, and a prophecy that promised I was going to fail. The bus was exactly as glamorous as you'd expect. The seats were sticky, the air smelled like old cheeseburgers, and the windows were grimy. We found a row in the back and settled in for the long haul. Annabeth immediately started going over our plan, or lack thereof. Okay, she said, her gray eyes serious. The entrance to the underworld is in Los Angeles. We have 10 days, that's 300 miles a day. We need a better plan, I said. Luke's flying shoes were in my bag, but I knew better than to use them. Flying in Zeus's territory when he already thought I was a thief seemed like a special kind of stupid. Annabeth and I started to argue. She thought I wasn't taking things seriously enough. I thought she was acting like she was the only one who knew anything. Grover, sitting between us, looked like he was watching a tennis match between two very angry wolverines. He kept sniffing the air nervously. Can you smell monsters? I asked him. He shook his head. Just cheeseburgers and really old people. We talked about the prophecy. Annabeth was convinced that the god who was turned had to be Hades, but the last two lines haunted me. You shall be betrayed by one who calls you a friend, and you shall fail to save what matters most in the end. I looked at Grover and Annabeth. One of them was going to betray me. Who? And what was I going to fail to save? My mom was already gone. What else was there? The bus shuddered to a halt in the middle of a thunderstorm somewhere in New Jersey. The driver announced a short delay. We waited, and then they got on. Three old ladies. They looked ancient, with wrinkled faces and identical, faded floral print dresses. They carried big wicker handbags. They shuffled down the aisle, their beady eyes scanning the passengers. And then their eyes locked on us, all six of them. They took the three empty seats right at the front of the bus, but they sat facing backward, just staring at us. My blood ran cold. I knew those faces, especially the one in the middle. It's them, I whispered to Grover and Annabeth. The Furies. Mrs. Dodds? Grover bleated, his face turning pale. Annabeth's hand flew to her Yankees cap. Okay, she said, her voice low and urgent. My turn. I'll sneak up on them. You two create a distraction. She put on the cap and vanished, but it was too late. The three old ladies stood up in unison and advanced down the aisle. The other passengers didn't seem to notice anything strange, just three grandmas walking. But I saw them for what they were. The one in the middle, Mrs. Dodds, smiled that horrible, vicious smile of hers. We have a problem with our ticket, Sonny, she rasped, her voice a low growl. We need to see your ticket. Now. She wasn't talking about a bus ticket. Give it to us, another one hissed. Give us what you stole. The bus driver yelled at them to sit down, but Mrs. Dodds just looked at him, and her eyes glowed red. The driver's face went slack, and he slumped over the wheel. I uncapped my pen, and Riptide sprang to life in my hand. The other passengers gasped, and then all hell broke loose. The Furies began to change. Their bodies stretched and contorted, their floral dresses melting away into leathery skin. Their hands turned into talons, their mouths into maws full of fangs, and huge bat wings ripped from their backs. One of them cracked a long, fiery whip. I was ready to fight, but Annabeth chose that moment to reappear right next to them, her invisibility cap knocked from her head. She was holding her bronze knife, but the Furies were on her in a second. There was a deafening boom, and the whole side of the bus exploded inward. Lightning. Zeus was taking pot shots at us. Rain and wind ripped through the bus. Passengers were screaming. I lunged forward, swinging Riptide. I cut one of the Furies down the middle, and she exploded into dust. The second one lunged at Annabeth, and Grover managed to knock her over the head with a tin can he'd found. That left Mrs. Dodds. She snarled at me, her whip cracking. You will die for this, Percy Jackson. She flew at me. I ducked under her whip and stabbed Riptide straight up. It sank deep into her chest. She shrieked, a sound that curdled my blood, and then she too disintegrated into a storm of yellow dust. Get out, Annabeth screamed. We scrambled through the hole in the side of the bus, tumbling onto the wet asphalt. A few seconds later, the bus's fuel tank exploded with a massive fireball, lighting up the night sky. We stood there, soaked to the bone in the pouring rain, on the side of a New Jersey highway. Sirens wailed in the distance. Our backpacks, our money, our food. Everything was gone. turned to ash in the wreckage of the bus. Our quest was only a few hours old and we were already fugitives, stranded and with nothing but the clothes on our backs. This, I realized, was going to be even harder than I thought. Ask me anything in the comments and please give feedback on what you'd like to see. Chapter 11. We visit the Garden Gnome Emporium. We ran for what felt like miles, stumbling through the dark, wet woods of New Jersey, the wreckage of the bus burning behind us. We were cold, miserable, and had absolutely nothing. No food, no money, no dry clothes. Annabeth was furious with me for being so reckless. Grover was trying to play peacemaker while simultaneously chewing on a tin can out of sheer stress. It was my fault, I said. The Furies were after me. You're right, Annabeth snapped. They were after you, which means you have to be more careful. What have you gotten us all killed? I didn't, I shot back. I saved you. You're impossible. You're insufferable. You're... Hey, guys, Grover interrupted, his nose twitching. I smell food. He was right. A delicious, greasy, unmistakable smell was wafting through the trees, the smell of frying hamburgers. We followed it like zombies, our argument forgotten. The scent led us to a long, low warehouse right by the road. The neon sign above the door was flickering. Some of the letters burnt out. It read, Auntie M's Garden Gnome Emporium. The place was weird. The front lot was a forest of concrete statues, cement satyrs, stone children, plaster animals, all kinds of creepy garden art, their faces frozen in expressions of surprise or terror. The front door creaked open, and a tall woman in a black gown and veil that covered everything but her hands stepped out. Children, she said, her voice raspy but kind, with a thick Middle Eastern accent. It is too late to be out all alone. Where are your parents? We gave her a mumbled story about our circus caravan leaving us behind. I don't think she bought it, but she just smiled. At least I think she smiled. It was hard to tell under the veil. Poor dear, she said. You must be hungry. Come in. I will feed you. No charge. Grover and Annabeth looked at me, their eyes screaming, No, trap, bad idea. But I was starving, and I was the one who had gotten our stuff blown up. I felt responsible. We'll take it, I said. She led us inside. The warehouse was part diner, part showroom. More statues were everywhere, dozens of them, all incredibly lifelike. It was like a museum of terrified people. She sat us down at a booth and brought us burgers, fries, and shakes. It was the best meal I'd ever had. As we ate, she told us her story. She kept her face covered, saying it was because of a bitter old woman who had been jealous of her. I was once a beautiful woman, she said, her voice laced with an ancient sadness. I had a boyfriend. He was powerful, and we met in the temple of my mistress, Athena. Annabeth stiffened at the name of her mother. Athena was cruel, the woman hissed. She did not like me seeing my boyfriend. As a punishment, she cursed me, transformed me into this. She took everything from me. She gestured around the warehouse. Now, all I have are my statues. They are my only company. That's when it all clicked. The statues. The hatred for Athena. My blood ran cold. Annabeth and Grover had figured it out too. Their faces were pale with terror. The statues are so lifelike, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Oh yes, she said. It is a gift to capture a person's image forever, in stone. She leaned forward. Why don't I take your picture? A souvenir of your visit. No, thank you, Annabeth said, getting to her feet and drawing her bronze knife. We're leaving. Such a pity, the woman sighed, and then she reached up to remove her veil. Don't look, Annabeth screamed. We scattered, diving behind statues and counters. I could hear it then, a sound that would haunt my nightmares. A dry, rattling, hissing sound. The sound of snakes. Auntie M was Medusa. Don't be shy, little heroes, she cooed. One little peek won't hurt. I knew I couldn't fight her directly. One look and I'd be a permanent garden decoration. I scrambled through the statues looking for something. Anything. My eyes landed on a green gazing ball, a reflective glass sphere on a pedestal. An idea. A crazy, stupid idea formed in my head. I could see her reflection in the sphere. Her face was a horrifying mask of rage, and her hair was a writhing nest of green snakes. I held up the sphere like a shield, never looking away from her reflection. "Percy!" Annabeth yelled, trying to create a diversion. Grover was throwing things at her from behind a concrete satyr. Medusa spun towards their voices, her back to me. Now was my chance. Using the reflection in the glass ball to guide me, I charged. I brought Riptide around in a wide arc. The sound was like a watermelon hitting concrete. I didn't look. I couldn't. I just kept my eyes locked on the reflection, watching as her headless body crumbled into dust. Her head, still writhing with snakes, rolled to a stop at my feet. We stood there, breathing heavily in a warehouse full of her petrified victims. We found some cash and drachmas in her office, along with a map and some shipping information for the underworld. Her business was a front for DOA recording studios in Los Angeles, the entrance to Hades. And then I did something impulsive, something angry. I found an empty box and some packing slips for Olympus. I packed Medusa's head, snakes and all, into the box. "What are you doing?" Annabeth asked, horrified. "I'm sending it to the gods," I said, my voice shaking with rage. "A little present." I filled out the shipping label. The gods, Mount Olympus, 600th floor, Empire State Building, New York. With a note that just said, "With best wishes, Percy Jackson." They thought I was a thief. They were playing with our lives. I wanted them to know I wasn't just another pawn in their game. We left the Emporium, our bags full of snacks and cash, and headed back into the night. We had a destination now, and we had a new, horrifying trophy to remember our first stop. Of course, I have the current time and location details. The journey west continues, with new challenges, unsettling dreams, and some unexpected help. Here is the detailed voiceover script for Chapter 12. Chapter 12. We get advice from a poodle. Intro music is quiet and sparse with the sound of crickets and a crackling campfire. It fades. Voiceover as Percy. We spent the next night camped out in a swampy patch of woods in New Jersey, trying to stay warm and dry. My clothes were still damp from the bus explosion, and every rustle of leaves made me jump. I felt like there was a giant neon sign hanging over my head that flashed, "Son of the Sea God. Right here. Free monster. Ciao." Grover was on watch, but he kept looking nervously at the ground. "I hate traveling underground," he muttered. I'd suggested the subway as a way to get across town, and he'd nearly had a panic attack. He explained that as a satyr, he was tied to the earth, and being underground felt wrong, suffocating. That meant no tunnels, no subways, no caves. It was going to make getting to the underworld extra fun. That night, my nightmares were back. But this time, it wasn't a horse and an eagle fighting on a beach. I was standing in a dark cavern, the air cold and heavy. At the edge of my vision was a deep black pit, and a voice came from it. A voice that wasn't human. It was ancient and cold and heavy, like slabs of rock grinding together. It spoke directly into my mind. "Brave one," it said, the words slithering through my thoughts. "They are using you. The gods are weak. Come to me. I can give you what you want. I can give you your mother back." The voice felt like it was trying to pull me apart, piece by piece. It offered me power, offered me revenge. It told me to bring the bolt to him. I woke up in a cold sweat, my heart hammering. I told Annabeth and Grover about the dream. Annabeth listened intently, her gray eyes narrowed in thought. "That doesn't sound like Hades," she said. "He always appears on a throne of bones. He's not a voice in a pit. This is something else, something older, something worse." She theorized that whatever was in that pit was the real enemy, using Hades as a scapegoat. The thought was terrifying. As we sat there, huddled around our sad little campfire, Annabeth told me about fatal flaws. She said every hero has one, a character trait so strong that it eventually leads to their downfall. Achilles' heel was just a metaphor for his pride. "What's yours?" I asked her. She looked away towards the fire. "Hubris," she said quietly. "Deadly pride. I think I can do anything better than anyone else. I think I could even rebuild Mount Olympus to be better than the original. That's what my mom, Athena, is the goddess of. Wisdom, battle, and architecture. She then looked at me. Your fatal flaw is probably personal loyalty. You would sacrifice the world to save a friend. Be careful with that, Percy. It can get you killed. Her words hung in the air, another prophecy to add to my growing collection of doom. We were stuck. We were broke. And we couldn't afford to travel. We couldn't fly. We couldn't go underground. And we couldn't stay put because the Furies were just the first monsters who would be coming for us. Grover saved us. He had wandered off to clear his head, and he came back looking excited. And he wasn't alone. He was leading a standard poodle, a very lost, very pink, very fluffy toy poodle. Her name is Gladiola, Grover announced. I'm not talking to a poodle, I said. Percy, Annabeth said, exasperated. Grover can talk to animals. He's a satyr. Grover and the poodle had a short, yappy conversation. It turned out Gladiola had run away from her rich family. She was tired of the pampered life, but there was a $200 reward out for her safe return. It was exactly what we needed for 3 cross-country train tickets. So our quest to save the world was briefly put on hold for Operation Return the Poodle. We found the family, collected the cash from a very grateful owner, and made a beeline for the nearest Amtrak station. As our train pulled out of the station, heading west, I felt a moment of relief. For the first time in days, we were moving forward. We had a plan. We had a destination. I watched the green hills of Pennsylvania roll by, trying to enjoy the moment of peace. But in the back of my mind, I could still hear that cold voice from the pit, whispering promises and threats. And I knew that our journey had only just begun. Outro music is a gentle, rolling theme, like a train on the tracks, with a hint of underlying tension. It fades. Chapter 13, I plunge to my death. On a quest to save the world, you'd think you'd get a moment to breathe, a chance to just relax and see the country. But that's the thing about being a half-blood. Trouble doesn't take a vacation. Just when I thought we could have a normal afternoon, I found myself 600 feet in the air with a fire-breathing monster for company. Here's what happened in St. Louis. The train ride west was surprisingly calm after we escaped New Jersey. For 2 days, we rattled through the American heartland. We played card games, ate junk food from the dining car, and I tried not to think about the voice in the pit or the prophecy that said I was going to fail. For a little while, we were just 3 normal kids on a trip. Then we got to St. Louis. The train had a 3-hour layover, and Annabeth was practically vibrating with excitement. The Gateway Arch, she said, her eyes shining. It's a masterpiece of architecture, a 630-foot-tall monument to the spirit of the American West. I have to see it. Grover was nervous. Annabeth, we're on a quest. A giant, shiny monument might not be the safest place for us. He was right, but I couldn't stand the thought of sitting around the station for 3 hours. Besides, I wanted to show Annabeth that I wasn't a coward. Come on, and I said, it'll be fine. A quick tourist trip. Famous last words. The arch was massive, a shimmering silver crescent against the blue sky. We rode to the top in a tiny claustrophobic elevator car, and we weren't alone. A fat lady in a denim dress and her tiny, nervous chihuahua squeezed in with us. The woman smelled weird, like smoke and reptiles. She kept smiling at me, and her eyes seemed to glitter with a hungry light. The observation deck at the top was crowded. The view was incredible, the whole city and the wide, muddy Mississippi River below. But I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. The fat lady and her dog were there too, standing near the exit. I tried to get us out of there, but the woman blocked our path. Now, little hero, she said, her voice suddenly raspy and reptilian. Don't be in such a hurry. Her dog started to growl, a sound way too deep for a chihuahua. Annabeth and Grover saw it then, the danger I'd been sensing. You've been a thorn in my master's side, the woman said. She snapped her fingers, and a wave of panic seemed to ripple through the observation deck. The other tourists started screaming about a fire, scrambling for the exits, leaving the 4 of us, and the dog alone at the top of the arch. The chihuahua was changing. It grew rapidly, its body elongating, its fur turning coarse and dark. A goat's body sprouted from its back, and a long diamond-headed snake grew from its rump, whipping back and forth. Its head was now the head of a massive lion with a mane caked in dried blood. It was the Chimera, the monster that haunted the nightmares of heroes. And the fat lady? She was Echidna, the mother of all monsters. "A test, Percy Jackson," Echidna hissed, "to see if you have the blood of a true hero or the blood of a coward." The Chimera roared, and a blast of fire shot from its mouth, setting the carpet ablaze. Annabeth and Grover were trapped on the other side of the flames. I was alone with this thing. I drew Riptide, but my hands were shaking. This was a monster out of my league. It lunged and I dodged, but the snaketail was faster. It whipped around and sank its fangs into my leg. The pain was instant, a white-hot fire spreading through my veins. Poison. I was dying. The Chimera blasted another hole in the side of the arch, a gaping wound of twisted metal overlooking the river far below. I was cornered, my vision blurring, the poison making me weak. "You have no faith, Percy Jackson," Echidna taunted from the sidelines. "You do not trust the gods. You do not even trust your own father. You will die a coward." She was right. I didn't trust them. But what other choice did I have? I looked down through the hole at the muddy water of the Mississippi, 630 feet below. My father's kingdom. "Father, help me," I whispered. Then I did the only thing I could. I ran for the hole. I heard Annabeth scream my name. I heard Echidna laugh. And then I jumped, plunging out into the open air, the wind roaring in my ears as I plummeted towards my death. Narrator. So there I was, falling from the tallest monument in the country, with monster venom in my veins. Was my dad, the god I barely knew, actually going to save me? Or was I about to become the world's largest demigod pancake on the banks of the Mississippi? Thanks for watching. As the series continues, let me know how I can adjust to produce the best experience possible.